Your film Leviticus is a queer coming of age story of two teenage boys learning to find their true selves as people shame, vilify, and try to change them. And that's already kind of a horror story in itself for some people, depending on who's watching it. But you also added a supernatural element where they're both being stalked by the entities in the form of one another. So, did Leviticus start off as a supernatural horror film, or did that element come later while you were writing the story?
It did start as a horror movie. I did it in response to, I think, a lot of regression that I'd seen in the last sort of 5 to 10 years around the rights that LGBTQI plus people had sort of fought for over the years. And I wanted to do something about homophobia and make a horror movie where homophobia was the fear at the center of the film. And I think that's because when I was younger, I loved watching horror movies. I turned to them for some sort of comfort, and I think I was not alone in that. I think a lot of other queer young people I spoke to at the time really turned to horror movies for the same reason. There's something about those themes of otherness and being an outsider that I think we really connected to. So it was really important to me to do that through this genre. And I think also this genre, horror movies, they really speak to you on a visceral level. They affect your body. And so I really wanted to sort of make the audience feel what these characters were going through.
Before watching this, I did not know that this was an Australian film, but what I'm used to seeing in Australian films is just a lot of desert, a lot of the outback, just like open landscapes. But I kind of got to see the suburbs of Australia, I felt in this. You see when the characters are riding their bikes, they have these huge oil refineries behind them, or there's the abandoned factory that they go into. So how important for you was it to capture the setting of Australia, how you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to set the film in a town that perhaps you got the sense that it had seen better days, that it maybe boomed once, and that maybe that industry kind of left and some people left with it, but the ideas they brought to that landscape had remained behind. And so that was really important to me. And I also just really loved the idea of a kind of clash of nature and humanity, so that the audience was sort of questioning, like, what is it about these old texts that everyone's living by that is actually from the universe, and what is it that they've just imposed on each other? It was a really big part of the aesthetic that I worked on with our production designer and our cinematographer.
Joe and Stacy, you both have excellent chemistry as the lead characters, Name and Ryan. You both create a captivating dynamic that gives the story a lot of emotional weight. So did you all do a lot of rehearsals to further find your characters, or did that come about naturally during shooting?
Well, like a bit of both, you know. I mean, we definitely had a lot of preparation. Just spending time together, and Adrian got us to do activities together, which are all kind of rooted in fear, like escape rooms and holding snakes and, like dropping each other off 15 minutes away and walking to find each other, with locations on, of course. But and then I think on set as well, I mean, you're always just so close together anyway, so you're just always bonding and connecting every day. So I think, it just worked hand in hand together.
Yeah, it's a complete split of both preparation and we're doing the work together, and then just naturally, like, friendships on set and relationships on set are so accelerated, right? You're spending like up to 12 hours of your day every single day for however long, which is you get to know someone pretty quickly. And Joe, is someone who makes it very easy to do that, and like is very open in general, and it kind of allowed me to get to know him, which in turn has really benefited the performance from my perspective.
Talking about your performance specifically, you kind of had a difficult role to tackle here because you weren't really just playing one character, you were playing two. You were playing Ryan, but you were also playing the violent, relentless, evil, mirrored version of him that's stalking Name the whole time. So how did you develop your performance differently for both of those roles?
I think Ryan was a lot more complex, right? He's the person, and we're also wonderfully complex. I think for Ryan, I really started from, I think, approaching any character, you start from what's most important to the story. And for that, in this story, we're talking about desire and fear and kind of the coexistence of them both. So I think I started for Ryan with his desires and fears and what triggered them and what those look like, and then building outwards and creating the nuances of his behaviour is kind of how I approached him. And then for the entity, it was a more singular approach I kind of picked one intention, which was to elicit a response within, I was always doing it with Joe, elicit a response within name, and once I get that response, crush his desire and replace it with fear. And I just kind of pursued that one intention, and I think that became the entity.
Joe, for your performance, you're playing just one character. We don't see an evil version of you, but there's definitely a development to Name's character. As you start off the movie, you're really reserved and shy. You're kind of being pushed around by everybody. And then as the film goes on, you really have to take charge and start doing things for your own self and for your own betterment. So how did you develop your performance for that character?
I worked very closely with Adrian, obviously, and figuring out the kind of arc that this character goes on, and also even speaking with our costume designer Zoe Castellano, she was telling me about obviously that her and Adrian worked previously before to kind of figure out that these boys kind of wear like baggier clothes at the start of the film. Then as the film progresses, it kind of becomes more loose, and it's like kind of symbolizing them more confident in their own skin because they're becoming more confident with who they are as people. So I think, it was definitely just because me and Adrian really talked about when that guilt turns into regret and where that happens. So I think, you just have to, I like to think of, like scenes, like an album, like track one has to cohesively go into track two, and it's like, it's like the same with scenes, right? It's like, how am I going to go from here to there? And then once you do that, it just all, flows.
They wanted us to be scared.